It's finally here. I created my own Umamusume spinoff. So, how did this happen? Last year, I got into Umamusume and, just like many others, I started imagining how would the series play out if it took place outside of Japan. A good example that comes to mind of this is Kagawa Raifu over on Twitter, who made several character designs for an Umamusume story set in Indonesia. So originally, I thought about writing a story about Halo, Special Week's grandpa, that took place in the USA, but as I was coming up with the concept and scenario, I realized something. The odds that we get official Umas, either just characters or a full-blown story, that take place in the US or Europe are very high, but it's unlikely that we're ever going to see a story set in Puerto Rico. And I thought that was kind of sad. So I took matters into my own hands and got to work on the plot and characters for this. So at first I had the idea of making a fan game or visual novel based on this concept, but I'd have no idea where to even begin to try to make an Umamusume fan game that was close to the gameplay of the gacha game. And while a visual novel is, in theory, easier to make than a full-blown fan game, I decided to start out small and write out a short manga series. Every chapter would be a single page with around 4 panels each. Honestly, I'm glad I decided to start small, because even though this is on paper easier than the fan game or visual novel, it is by no means easy at all, let me tell you. Another challenge that came about was the lack of information online about horse racing and PR, at least compared to the abundance of info on horse racing in Japan and the USA. Trust me, I've looked up every blog post, Facebook page, YouTube channel, the Equibase records, every fringe page you can imagine that looks like it was made in 2003. And even then, it feels like I'm working off very limited information. But above all else, I've had a lot of fun making this, and I'm looking forward to sharing what I've made with everyone else. One of the biggest challenges I do have to mention was definitely trying to find Puerto Rican artists that were more than happy to work with me and bring these characters and scenarios to life. While I'm not against the idea of working with non-Puerto Rican artists, I really wanted to make sure they were from PR so that they could make the characters and locations by referencing their own life experiences, and very much the same way I wrote the scenario by drawing on from my own life experiences from living in PR. I contacted a lot of artists, and believe me, most of them either ghosted me or straight up just told me directly that they were unwilling or unable to help me. So I just want to take this section out to thank Juan Marcos and That's Free Will's Draws on Instagram for agreeing to help make me make these stories a reality. Now, this whole thing kickstarts off with the Verset arc. Now, originally, this wasn't actually the first story arc I made. This is actually the second. Because you see, while I was looking up information on the best thoroughbreds from PR, I saw a name that came up a lot, like Verset's Dancer, Verset's Jet. I had a eureka moment, realizing, hey, I could make this work as sort of like my own take on the Mejiro clan. However, there was a problem. From at least the initial information I saw, Verset's Dancer and Verset's Jet have way too good a race records. They felt like they'd be too powerful to be protagonists in an Umamusume story, or at least in a traditional type of story, which is more along the lines of what I want to make. I decided to leave them off for the side, work on a different storyline with Nat, and it was around that time that I realized, well, Jet and Dancer are two of the best thoroughbreds of the whole island, so it would probably be even weirder if I don't address them in some way, shape, or form. So I decided to look up into Verset's Dancer and Verset's Jet, and Jet especially. It turns out that while his record IRL was amazing, he actually went through a lot of hardships. There is a genuine story about having to live up to the expectations that people have of you and working your way up from all that. And that's sort of the theme I went into with every character here. How does the pressure of everyone's expectations and the weight of all that affect you? Now, I'm gonna address probably the biggest question you probably have just from reading this first chapter. Why is the whole family tokusatsu themed in their G1 outfits? And there's actually a pretty long list of explanations I can come up with, such as how Umamusume itself already has a lot of tokusatsu references, ranging from the obvious to the more subtle, or how, at least in my opinion, the word hero and idol are two words that mean the same thing, or how tokusatsu heroes and Umamusume are both famous technically for their onstage performances. But the biggest and most important reason is this: because I like it. That's it. And I think that's definitely good enough. Another reason is because I think when you're making stuff like, say, doujinshi or fanfiction, I think you should be allowed to get just a little bit weird with it. Of course, within reason. You're allowed to just do something a bit strange, something that you might look at it and go, oh, but this wouldn't really happen in the main series, right? But hey, it's like I said earlier, it's the beauty of fan works is that you can get a little bit weird with it. Just do something more unusual. And that's pretty much where I went in with the theme. Sort of like my own take on the Mejiro family combined with my interests in tokusatsu to make this sort of tokusatsu themed family where everyone looks up to them as this big heroic group of Umamusume. And then here comes Jet. As you can already tell, she's a bit of a troublemaker. I'll definitely talk more about every individual character's profile, but for now, let me know what you guys think. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more, and catch you guys next time. Take care. Adios.